The United States government isn't a machine. It's not a fortress. It is, and this is the key, a house of cards that survived a near-fatal crash, only because a few specific individuals decided to break the rules to save it.
That's the hard truth we have to start with, isn't it? We all grow up with this idea, this image of American democracy being built on, granite and steel.
Right. Unbreakable?
But when you actually open up the logs from the 2020 and 2021 transition of power, you realize you're not looking at a fortress at all. You're looking at a legacy computer system that suffered a massive catastrophic overheat.
And that's exactly the framework for today's deep dive. We are performing a system security audit on that transition. We've got the sources right here, Bob Woodward and Robert Costa's book, Peril, the January 6th committee reports. But we're not reading them as history books today.
No, we're reading them as crash logs from a server that almost melted down.
Our mission is to look at the machinery itself. We get so caught up in the politics, right? Who likes who tweeted what. But today is about the engineering. The sources show that in late 2020, the operating system of the Constitution suffered what tech people call a zero-day exploit.
And for anyone not in IT, that's a vulnerability nobody even knew existed until the moment someone used it to try and bring the whole system down.
I have to say, framing it like that makes me a little nervous. I grew up on Schoolhouse Rock, checks and balances.
We all did.
The three branches of government are supposed to keep each other in line. If one part goes rogue, the others lock it down. That's the promise of the software, isn't it?
That's the marketing pamphlet. The data from these sources, though, it shows something terrifying. The checks failed. The balances completely froze. We're looking at a system that required a manual override by unelected officials, just to prevent total deletion.
Okay, that is a huge claim, so let's unpack it. If this is a system crash, we need to find the moment the temperature gauge started ticking up. Where's the trigger?
The trigger is the CPU, the central processing unit of the executive branch overheating right after the election. We have these detailed reports, especially in Peril, focusing on General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He was monitoring the executive node, President Trump, and the telemetry was bad.
Bad how? I mean, was it just a politician being angry about losing an election?
It was far, far beyond that.
Yeah.
Milley describes the president screaming at officials, pacing the Oval Office like a caged animal. He's just spewing conspiracy theories that his own agencies had already debunked. Milley's assessment wasn't political at all. It was clinical.
Clinical.
He believed the commander-in-chief had suffered a serious mental decline and was processing data erratically.
Mental decline. Not a phrase you ever want to hear applied to the person with the nuclear codes.
And it wasn't just the behavior. It was the historical pattern Milley thought he was seeing. He told his aides, and this is a direct quote, "We are on the way to a right-wing coup." He was specifically fearing a Reichstag moment.
He's referencing 1933 Germany.
He is. The moment Hitler used a fire at the German parliament to declare a state of emergency and seize absolute power. Milley was terrified that chaos wasn't random, but was being manufactured to justify some kind of military intervention.
So Milley sees the system overheating. He's the top military guy. But he's just one person. Who does he even talk to? Who confirms that diagnosis? Because if he acts alone, isn't he the one staging a coup?
That's the razor's edge he's walking. But then he gets a call from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And the transcript of this call is just chilling. It's this moment of high-status confirmation. Pelosi is blunt. She says, referring to the president, he's crazy. You know he's crazy.
And a general is supposed to just defend the chain of command, right?
Yeah. Right.
Even if they disagree, they can't just agree with the speaker that the president is unfit.
On paper, sure. But Milley doesn't defend him. He replies, "Madam Speaker, I agree with you on everything." That's the moment the check engine light turns solid red. You have the head of the legislature and the head of the military agreeing the chief executive's processing logic has failed. But here's the problem. The off-switch inauguration day was still weeks away.
And in the meantime, that overheating CPU is still connected to the most dangerous hardware on Earth.
Which brings us to the most critical zero-day exploit in this whole audit, the nuclear command and control system.
This is the part of the research that honestly kept me up. I think we all assume there are safeguards. You can't just push a button because you're having a bad day, right? There's a two-man rule or something.
Yeah, that assumption is it's incorrect. And this is where the engineering gets really scary. The system is designed for speed, not consensus. It's a Cold War legacy. The physics of it are simple. The president has sole authority.
Sole authority, so
yeah.
No veto.
No veto. The Secretary of Defense can't veto it. Congress can't vote on it. The vice president can't stop it. If the president gives the order, the system is hardwired to execute in minutes.
So the biscuit, the card with the codes, and the football, the briefcase, they're not a request form.
No, they're authentication protocols. That's it. Once the identity is verified, the command goes out. The whole system assumes sanity at the top. And Milley was terrified that an erratic president might launch a strike to create a crisis, maybe against China or Iran, just to stay in power.
Okay, so what does he do? He can't legally take the codes away from him.
No, that would be an actual coup.
Yeah.
You can't remove the hardware. So he installs an unauthorized software patch. On January 8th, Milley summons the senior officers to his office in the Pentagon. These are the people who run the National Military Command Center, the war room.
The people who would physically transmit that launch order.
The very ones. He pulls them in, shuts the door, and gives an instruction that is in no military manual, anywhere. He tells them, no matter what you're told, you do the procedure, you do the process, and I'm part of that procedure.
I'm part of that procedure, but he wasn't, was he?
Legally. Not at all. The chairman is an advisor. He is not in the nuclear chain of command. That goes from the president to the Secretary of Defense. Milley basically hijacked the chain of command to insert himself as a human circuit breaker, a human in the loop.
That is, I mean, on one hand, you think, thank God someone was thinking straight. But on the other hand, you're describing a general giving illegal orders to ignore the president unless he personally signed off.
It's the ultimate paradox.
It's a soft coup to prevent a hard coup.
Exactly. To save the Constitution, he had to bend it into a pretzel. The scene in Peril is so intense, he goes around the room, looks each officer in the eye, asks, "Got it?" and demands verbal yes, sir. He made them swear an oath to him.
And it wasn't just internal, right? He was also managing the external connections that China calls.
This is one of those controversial pieces of the whole thing. U.S. intelligence showed that China was picking up on all this chaos in Washington. They were getting really spooked. They thought the U.S. was prepping a first strike to keep Trump in office. Their military was on high alert.
So Milley picks up the phone.
He calls his counterpart, General Li Zucheng. And first he says, General, I want to assure you that the American government is stable. We are not going to attack. That's pretty standard de-escalation. But then he goes further.
Go much further.
He says, General, you and I have known each other for 5 years. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a bolt out of the blue.
Wait, hang on. He promised to tip off a rival military power.
That is exactly what he said.
That sounds like, I mean, the word for that is treason, isn't it? If you tell your adversary, I'll warn you before we attack, you're completely undermining the entire concept of a deterrent.
Politically, yes. It sounds like treason. But look at it through the engineering lens Milley was using. He was acting as a load balancer. He knew if China panicked and launched their nukes because they thought we were about to launch ours, it's game over for everyone.
So he lied to them.
He lied to General Li. He told him the U.S. was 100% steady, even though he knew it was complete chaos internally. He stabilized the external connection to stop a catastrophic feedback loop. He believed he was preventing World War III.
It's incredible. You've got this one man standing there holding the wires together with his bare hands, but while he's locking down the military hardware, the malicious code is being written just down the street.
Exactly. The attack on the transition wasn't just the riot. That was the brute force part. The really sophisticated attack was a code injection using legal memos. And this is where we get to the Green Bay sweep.
The Green Bay sweep. It sounds like a football play.
It was a plan developed by Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon using a legal theory from John Eastman. They were looking for an exploit in the election certification software.
And they found one in the 12th Amendment.
They found what they saw as a grammatical loophole. The 12th Amendment says the votes shall then be counted.
That's passive voice. My high school English teacher would have a fit.
And John Eastman loved it. Because it's passive, it doesn't say who does the counting. Eastman's argument was that because the vice president is president of the Senate, he is the ultimate arbiter.
Yeah.
That he could unilaterally decide which electoral votes to count and which to just throw out.
So the plan wasn't just to object. The plan was to have Vice President Pence actually discard the votes from states like Arizona and Pennsylvania.
Correct. The Green Bay sweep was designed to delay certification and kick the whole election back to the state legislatures. And if that didn't work, to force a contingent election in the House of Representatives.
Okay, you have to explain that part. Why the House? The Democrats control the House. Wouldn't they just vote for Biden and end it?
And this is the really clever, scary part. It's a vulnerability most people don't know about.
Yeah.
In a normal vote, yes, Democrats win. But in contingent election, which is what happens if no one gets to 270 electoral votes, the rules completely change.
How so?
Each state delegation gets one vote, not each representative. So California's 53 members get 1 vote. Wyoming's single member gets 1 vote.
Oh, I see where this is going.
While Democrats had more members total, Republicans controlled more individual state delegations. They had the majority in about 26 or 27 states.
Wow. So if they could just stop Biden from hitting 270 and throw it to the House under those rules, Trump wins. Legally.
Precisely. They were trying to force the system into safe mode, knowing that in safe mode they had the administrator privileges.
That is diabolically clever. And while this legal code was being written, the social media vector was being primed to create the pressure.
You got it. Dan Scavino, the social media director, was monitoring forums like the Donald.win. He saw the chatter about occupying the Capitol, about bringing zip ties. He knew the temperature was redlining. And still, the signal went out. Be there, will be wild. That was the execute command.
So this all comes down to one person, Mike Pence. And I think the story we tell ourselves now is that he was this stoic defender of the Constitution, right? I will do my duty.
The sources paint a much more human and, frankly, a much more precarious picture. Pence wasn't a statue. He was a politician under unimaginable pressure. And he was wavering.
He was actually wavering. He considered going along with it.
The Peril book details this scene in the Oval Office on January 4th. Trump is pushing him hard. He says to Pence, "You can either go down in history as a patriot or you can go down in history as a pussy."
That's direct.
Brutal. And Pence didn't just say no. The book says he was looking for a way to say yes. He kept asking his aides if there was any flexibility, any loophole he could use.
He was checking to see if the malicious code would actually run.
And when he couldn't find an answer, he called tech support. He called a former vice president.
Who do you even call for tech support on a potential coup?
He called Dan Quayle.
Dan Quayle. No, the guy who got mocked for misspelling potato.
The very same. And this is just the deep irony of history. The fate of American democracy rested on a phone call to a golf course in Arizona. Pence calls Quayle, explains the situation, the pressure he's under.
And what does Quayle say? Does he say, well, let me check with my lawyers?
Not for a second. This is the hard patch that saved the system.
Yeah.
Quayle just tells him, Mike, you have no flexibility on this. None. Zero. Forget it. Put it away. Pence even tries to push back. He says, you don't know the position I'm in. And Quayle just cuts him off. He says, I do know the position you're in. I also know what the law is. You have no power. Just forget it.
That is just astonishing. Because if Quayle had been wishy-washy, if he'd said, well, Mike, you know, it's a gray area.
Then the logic gate might have opened the other way.
Yeah.
Pence might have tried it. The count stops. States recall their electors. The House votes by delegation. We would have had a constitutional crisis the system has no automated way to solve.
It was really that close. We think of it as inevitable, but it came down to Dan Quayle being firm on a Tuesday afternoon.
And on Pence finally accepting that reality. But look, the riot, the physical attack on the Capitol, that was the backup plan. That happened because the code injection failed first.
So the sisters survived, the crash was averted, we rebooted on January 20th. But did we fix the bugs? Or are we just running the same vulnerable software?
That is the unpatched vulnerability, isn't it? Let's do a final system check. General Milley is retired now. Have the laws about sole authority for nuclear weapons changed?
I haven't, have they?
They have not. The circuit breaker, that oath Milley made them swear, that was not made official policy. It was a personality-driven patch. If a president orders a strike today, we're just hoping the next general is as willing to bend the rules as Milley was.
That is terrifying. We're betting the world on the personality of one appointee. What about the election exploit?
There's some good news there. Congress did update the Electoral Count Act. They clarified the vice president's role is purely ceremonial. So that specific Eastman exploit has been patched.
Okay, well, that's something. At least that loophole is closed.
It is. But the underlying vulnerability, the big one, it's still there. The system relies on people on normies, like Pence, like elected officials, like judges, agreeing to follow the rules even when their team loses. The audit shows that the machine of government is a myth.
It's not a machine.
It's people. It's a shared belief. And when that belief fades, the machine just stops. Milley, Pence, Quayle, they barely held the line against a zero-day attack.
And the thing about hackers is they learn. They iterate.
Exactly. The transition of 2020 was a stress test, a penetration test, and it revealed exactly where all the weak points are.
So the final thought for you to take away is this. Next time, the people trying to crash the system won't be using a beta version of the code. They'll have the crash logs from 2020. They'll know exactly where the circuit breakers are, and they'll know who they need to replace to make sure those breakers don't trip.
We survived the crash, but we haven't rebuilt the engine.
If you want to keep auditing the system with us and see the blueprints behind the chaos, make sure you're subscribed to the deep dive. We'll see you in the next log entry.